dígamelo. Qué tranza, amigos. Oh no, I didn't want that. sorry. I'm trying to figure out how to do the. I'm still learning, amigos, how to use these. I mean the lives on YouTube. Not very familiar. I'm usually doing lives on either Instagram or Facebook more than on YouTube. But hey, I figured I would do it on YouTube today and kind of check in with you guys. ¿Cómo están? ¿Cómo están? How's it going, guys? ¿Cómo están, amigos? ¿Todo bien? Qué bueno, amigos. So for the ones who don't know me, amigos, mi nombre es Daniel Herrera. I'm Daniel Herrera, and I'm a language coach. I'm a language teacher. I teach English speakers Spanish, right? Typically, I am more active on Instagram and Facebook just because these two platforms are connected. So that's why I can. I'm constantly posting and teaching you new words on Instagram and Facebook, right? And again, like I said, the content on these platforms it is shareable. So whatever I post on Facebook shares automatically to Instagram and vice versa. So yeah, that's why I'm more active there. But I'm trying to be more present and more active on YouTube also. So that's why I'm trying to at least do one live session on YouTube every week, right? And so today, amigos, I wanted to cover a very interesting topic, very important topic, I should say. Um, it's the topic of overcoming mistakes, right? Overcoming beginners' mistakes when you're trying to learn Spanish, right? And um, the way I was able to think of this topic, the way I was able to come up with this topic is because last week, amigos, I ran a poll on my Instagram stories. And so on the poll, I was basically asking my audience, right? I was like, hey, amigos, what do you feel is the biggest obstacle for you when you're learning Spanish? I mean, all of you are learning right now, so I'm curious to know what it is you feel is the most challenging thing for you, right? That was my question, and then I gave them options, to choose from, right? And the winner from this poll, amigos, was avoiding beginners' mistakes when learning Spanish. So it seems to me that a lot of people want to know how to overcome these mistakes, how to overcome um, beginners' mistakes, to be more specific, right? So this is what I'm gonna be talking about today, amigos. This is what I'm gonna be um, explaining and kind of giving you my take on how you should avoid beginners' mistakes when learning Spanish, right? So this is what we're gonna be talking about today. And again, the reason I came up with this topic is because apparently a lot of people are interested in avoiding mistakes when they are speaking a foreign language, amigos, right? So the first thing I'm gonna say for mistakes, amigos, right? Nobody likes making mistakes. I mean, I understand that, right? You, me, we all hate making mistakes. It's not a pretty feeling, you know. But the thing with mistakes, amigos, is that mistakes are necessary, right? Mistakes are a fundamental piece to the equation when you're learning something new, right? So if you're a beginner, if you're a beginner learning Spanish, you're just starting out to learn Spanish, it's you in a way you have to expect mistakes, and that's why I'm like, yeah, I gave you this title, right, like avoiding beginners mistakes, but ironically mistakes are going to be part of the journey, right? There is no journey without mistakes, so we can't really avoid them. Right? So in order to and here is the paradox, right? Here's the paradox. In order to avoid them, right, down the road, eventually, we're definitely going to avoid these beginners mistakes, but um, we're going to be dealing with better mistakes, if you will, right? So to be completely honest, amigos, mistakes never really go away. The quality of our mistakes just get improved over time, right? So we get to deal with better mistakes next time around, right? So that's the gist of what I'm trying to say, right? So in order to don't look to, don't look to avoid them, don't look to avoid mistakes at the beginning, amigos. When you're starting out to learn Spanish, you need to be comfortable with making them more. Actually, you need to be making more mistakes in order to improve faster, right? and and then once you level up, you won't have these beginners mistakes anymore, but you'll have better mistakes, right? You'll have to deal with more difficult mistakes, right? You'll be making more complex mistakes, if you will, right? So this is how I wanted to start out this life. Yes, we all want to avoid mistakes, but in a way we need to embrace these mistakes at the beginning if we want to uh, finally overcome them later on, right? But then again, and I mean, I don't want to be, discouraging. I don't want to be discouraging you from starting. No, I just want to make you comfortable with making mistakes. I want you to embrace them, because this is the only way we're gonna level up. And I also want to say that mistakes are never going away. We're just going to be making better mistakes. The better we get, we overcome, the beginner's mistakes, but we get to deal with better mistakes the next time around. You know what I mean, amigos? So now, that being said, amigos, once we're comfortable with mistakes, and once we understand that they are part of the journey, there is no way around, improving without the mistakes. Once we understand this, what we need to do is to actually identify what these mistakes are when you're speaking Spanish, right? I I came up with four um, common common mistakes when we're speaking Spanish from my experience and what I've seen in people that are training with me. I do one-on-one coaching for people who want to improve their conversational their conversational Spanish. And let me actually walk around, because otherwise it's gonna be some people are talking back there, and it's distracting, when I'm trying um, to share with you guys some of these tips, right? I think sometimes when I just walk and kind of talk at the same time, it helps me actually come up with better ideas, and it's just a better feeling, So I also get to show you around a little bit, while I you know take this little stroll while explaining these mistakes that I was talking about, right? I was talking about beginners' mistakes, right? So we're gonna be looking at four. There's four common mistakes that I've identified from people who are learning Spanish, right, for the first time. And a lot of people, like the first most common beginner's mistake is when people get to confuse uh, the verb to be, right? In English, you have the verb to be, and it's simpler in English because you use it for basically everything, right? I mean, not everything, but you use it a lot, right? And it's the same one. Whereas in Spanish, we have two, right? We have ser, to be, is the verb to be, but we also have estar, right? And we make a distinction on how we use this verb to be in Spanish, right? So, like, let me give you an example. In Spanish, we say, and this is the mistake I hear all the time people make, right? They say, soy, soy cansado, soy cansado. Can you identify the problem with this statement, soy cansado? Right? You're talking about an emotion, right? Cansado. What does cansado mean, amigos? Cansado means tired, right, in Spanish. But if you say soy, soy cansado, and people always confuse these two, soy versus estoy, right? Ser and estar, right? They're both the verb to be, but you have to know when to use them, right? So soy, if you're gonna say soy cansado, you need to recognize that soy, we use soy for more permanent states. Typically, we use soy when we're talking about our jobs, right? Because our jobs, amigos, our jobs are linked to our personality, right? And if we're talking about our personalities are more permanent in ourselves as human beings, right? So I can talk about my job and I can say, soy profesor, right? Soy profesor. Soy profesor. What am I saying, amigos? I'm saying I'm a teacher, profesor, right? And again, why am I using soy? Because I'm talking about my career. And my career is something permanent in my identity, right? So this is when you want to use soy versus estoy. Now, if you're talking about your emotions, amigos, right? Your emotions. And you know what happens with emotions? Emotions are temporary, you know? Emotions are temporary, and so because they're temporary, you can recognize that, oh, it's a temporary state, so it's just an emotion. So I'm gonna use estoy versus soy, right? So if you're talking about you feeling tired, for example, I just told you how to say tired in Spanish. In Spanish, we say cansado, or if you're a female, you say cansada. So, how would you say I'm tired in Spanish? Would you say soy cansada o cansado, or would you say estoy cansado o cansada? Which one would you go with? You would wanna go with estoy, amigos. Estoy, because estoy is for temporary states, right? Temporary states. So another emotion could be feliz. Feliz. Feliz is an emotion, right? And what are you gonna use for feliz? Since you know it's an emotion and you know it's temporary, you're gonna use estoy feliz. Estoy feliz. So do you see how it works? There is estoy for long term, for permanent states, and then, hey, saludos desde tu fundillo. Hola, yeah, ¿qué tal? Tu fundillo, Perú. Nice. Somebody saying hola from tu fundillo, Peru. Gracias, amigo. Gracias. Thank you for saying hola. And again, like I was saying, amigos, estoy for permanent. No, never mind. Estoy for temporary. Soy for long term, for more permanent, right? So if I say soy profesor, I gave you that example, right? Profesor is a long term it's my profession, so I'm gonna be doing it for a while. So I use soy, right? Whereas estoy is for temporary states of mind, temporary emotions, right? Feliz, cansado, triste, right? All these emotions that we experience as human beings, they are just temporary, right? Now, this mistake that people make and they confuse all the time. The second mistake, most common beginner's mistake is um, people tend to forget to use the articles, in Spanish. In Spanish, we have la and el, amigos. La for feminine nouns, el for masculine nouns, you know? So you always have to keep that in mind, right? So if you're describing uh, a car, how do you say a car in Spanish? Car. You say carro, carro. And so carro, it's, what do you think? Is carro feminine or masculine? What is carro? Carro is masculine, amigos, right? And because it's masculine, you want to use the right article with it. So you would say el carro over la carro, right? You don't say la carro because carro, again, is masculine. Now, but if you're talking about something feminine, like a feminine noun, like for example, casa. Casa is feminine, right? Casa is a feminine noun, right? Because it ends with an A. So would you say el casa or la casa? Which one would you say? You would say la casa, right? Because again, you identify that casa is a feminine noun, right? So every noun in Spanish, every word in Spanish, if it's a noun, you want to make sure it's a noun. You have to identify, is it feminine or masculine, right? This is something you don't have in English, so that's why a lot of people struggle to recognize, the right article and to also match it, because in Spanish we have also plural and singular, So like I was just talking about el carro, right? El carro, masculine. El carro is masculine. But what if I'm talking about multiple cars? Would you say el carros, right? And keep in mind, amigos, that when you're talking about plural in Spanish, you're describing these nouns, you add the S at the end. So I'm not saying carro no more. I'm saying carros with the S at the end, right? That's what makes it plural. So, and because I'm using the plural form of this noun, I have to match this to the plural article as well, right? So the plural article for carros, plural, right, is going to be, and you've also identified that it's masculine, is going to be los carros, right? Los carros. And then another example I gave you was casa feminine. In its singular form, you want to say la casa, right? What if you're talking about multiple houses, amigos? What would you say instead? You would say las casas, right? No los, right? Because casas, again, is feminine and plural, right? So las casas, right? So again, this is tricky for English speakers, amigos, because in English you only have, the, and then you're done, right? You don't have to think about plural, singular, masculine, feminine, right? But in Spanish we have these features, if you will, these features that they push us to use the right articles, and also the right articles, and also match them to the type of nouns that we're trying to communicate, So, or in the gender, that's what I meant. Masculine and feminine, and then the S at the end for when we're talking about the plural form of these nouns, amigos. So always keep that in mind. And again, this is the second most common mistake for people learning Spanish, right? The first one I already covered, right? What do you remember? What was the first one? What was the first one, amigos? The first most common mistake. Uh, do you remember? Let me know in the comments. Let me know in the comments. And the second one was um, the articles, right? The articles that in English, you don't have to remember or gender, masculine or feminine. No, you just use the car, the house, and then the cars, the houses, right? But in Spanish, we need to be careful with the gender, you know, el and la, and then la singular, las plural, and then el singular, los plural, right? Masculine, right? So the next amigos, the next most common mistake that people make when they're learning Spanish is that they are translating single words, right? And this is helpful, at the beginning. You need to start translating, word by word. But the more you start getting better, the more you do it, of course you naturally start making progress. um, there comes a time when you need to start translating whole phrases over just single words, because sometimes the translation doesn't really work very well, right? It doesn't translate very well. And so that's why you need to be sometimes memorizing whole phrases, right? Especially when it comes to um, saying statements such as "I'm hungry" in Spanish, right? In Spanish we say "I'm hungry," but we don't say "I'm hungry" like you do in English, right? In English, yeah, you say "I'm hungry," and then people understand that you wanna eat. But in Spanish, we use the verb to have. So in Spanish we say tengo, I have, tengo hambre, tengo hambre. So basically what we're saying, right, if we were to translate it to the letter and literally, it would be I have hunger, right? I have hunger. That would be the translation into English, right? But in English that would sound a little off, it would sound weird, because you don't say that. You say I'm hungry. But in Spanish we say tengo hambre, tengo hambre, which, if you're to translate that, it would say, oh yeah, you would be saying I have hunger, right? Tengo hambre, right? So phrases like this you need to memorize, because there is no other way for you to get them right when you're using them, in your interactions with others, right? But now in Spanish, to mean that you're hungry, you say tengo hambre, tengo hambre, right? Now another one similar to this is when you're talking about the weather, right? When you're talking about the weather, that's why a lot of people, confuse this phrase, to say I'm hot, right? They they usually say estoy caliente, right? But that's not right. That's wrong, right? You're saying something else if you say estoy caliente, right? It's like saying that you're horny, right? Um, so in Spanish, instead of saying estoy caliente, again, in Spanish we use the verb to have, just like uh, tengo hambre, I have hunger. You also say tengo calor, amigos. Tengo calor, right? I have heat, right? The translations is a little weird. It's like if you were to translate it from English into Spanish, literally it would be like saying tengo, I have heat, but that's how we say it in Spanish, right? We say tengo calor, right? Tengo hambre, tengo calor, right? And so there you go, amigos. These are just mistakes, right? Mistakes that people make when they are just starting out. But the sooner you address these mistakes, the faster you're going to start recognizing, okay, this is how you say it in Spanish. So I should be careful. I should be careful when I translate, when I translate these words, right? That's why my advice for you is to start, the better you get at Spanish, start not just translating single words, but phrases, whole phrases, right? Again, if you're a beginner, like a total beginner, start out just doing single words, but after a month, after fixed that you've been, you know learning these words, do phrases too. Do phrases, because some of these phrases don't translate very well from English to Spanish or vice versa, amigos. Okay, so never forget that. Never forget that. So that's the third most common mistake, amigos, that people make when they're first learning Spanish, right? And I call them beginners mistakes, right? And don't feel bad. Don't feel bad that you're making these mistakes, because again, like I said at the beginning, mistakes are our best teachers, amigos. Mistakes are our best teachers. They are actually helping us move the needle. They are actually, being educational for us, right? So we need to take the lessons. The only problem with mistakes, the only problem is that sometimes we make them habits, bad habits. That's when mistakes become a problem, when we are making them and we don't realize that we're making them, so we keep repeating them, right? And so they become bad habits. But if you learn how to recognize them, and like I said, you're learning from your mistakes, that's actually positive, amigos. And you actually need the mistakes to start, leveling up faster, right? Anyways, amigos, I don't want to, make this life too long. The last beginner's mistake that people make is the pronunciation, right? The pronunciation. A lot of English speakers struggle to pronounce the double L in Spanish, right? So in Spanish, the double L is part of the alphabet, right? It's part of the alphabet in Spanish, and so we have a name for this, right? For this letter, the double L in Spanish is called elle, elle, right? That's what we call the double L in Spanish. So the animal, right? The animal. It's in English you say llama, right? This Andean animal. You call it llama, right? But you're mispronouncing it, right? Because in Spanish we don't say llama, because this word has two L's, and the pronunciation for this letter is eye. We say llama, right? Not llama, right? And there is many words in Spanish that start with the double L as well. Another word in Spanish that has the two L's is rain, amigos. Rain. How do you say rain in Spanish? Do you know? We say lluvia. Lluvia, amigos. Lluvia, right? So again, lluvia has the double L, right? We don't say lluvia, no, right? We say lluvia because it has the two L's. So you keep in mind, amigos, that this is how you pronounce the double L in Spanish. So when you pronounce these words, you want to sound better and you want to sound more natural, you have to really make sure you're pronouncing this right. So I gave you two words, right? Lluvia and llama, right? Rain and llama. But there is other words, like there is the verb to call. How do you say to call in Spanish? In Spanish we say llamar. Llamar. Again, this is a very important verb. If you want to call your friend, you say voy a llamar. Llamar. See, double L right there. Double llamar. It's not lamar, right? So voy a llamar a mi amigo. I'm gonna call my friend, right? So do you see how this works, amigos? So keep this in mind, so that when you're learning Spanish, you're using these words, you don't come across as a beginner, like a total beginner. Now, the other word that is also not a word. My bad. It's not a word. The other letter, it's a letter, right? It's a letter that people struggle to pronounce. This letter is the letter R, right? The R. People struggle to roll their R's in Spanish, right? And I get asked all the time, amigos, like, hey, I can't roll my R's in Spanish, right? And what do I do? How to improve it? And I always tell them, like, hey, if you want to make progress, you need to, prioritize these these sounds in Spanish, you know? So the rolling of your R's, you need to consistently start pronouncing words that has the letter R, right? So the first thing I would say is come up with a list of words in Spanish that have the letter R in them, right? I can give you some examples, you know, like carro. We talked about carro. See, when I say carro, I'm rolling my R's. What's another What's another word in Spanish with the letter R? Ratón. Ratón is another word, right? Um, Machu Picchu English, yes. Machu Picchu, yeah. So ratón. Rat, ra. See, they are. So you make a list of all words in Spanish with this letter, and then you every day you practice. You roll your R's by um, making a voice recording of of you pronouncing all these words, right? And the more you do this, you're gonna start replaying these recordings, and you're gonna be like, oh, maybe the first day you're gonna suck. They're gonna be like, oh, I don't sound very well. I really suck at pronouncing the R. That's the first day. The second day, you have your list of words, and you're hitting record, and you're recording your voice. And the second day is gonna sound, a little better. And then the third day you show up again, and again you have your list with all the words that have the R sound in them. And then because you're making recordings, amigos, you're recording your voice. Guess what's gonna happen? You're not only training your voice and the R's, the rolling of the R's. You're also training your ear to identify what sounds good in Spanish and what doesn't, right? Because you can always, and I'm sure you've always heard how native speakers pronounce the R. So what's gonna happen is that when you start making recordings of your voice, your ear is gonna start picking up on certain patterns, on certain things that you're gonna start noticing, like, oh, I didn't say this right here, but you're consistently training it. You're gonna start improving, right? It's gonna happen. I promise you. I've done this with other people, but again, it's not gonna happen right away. You need to give yourself some time. You need to be patient with yourself, and again, consistency pays off, amigos, right? And again, you have your list and you have your phone. You don't even need a voice recorder. Back in the day, I was recording my voice to improve the sounds in English that I wanted to master.